My name is Damien McKeown. I'm the chairperson of Cula GA. We are based up in Dalkey, in High Road, but we stretch from Bray as far as Monkstown. So we have pitches, thanks to the Dunere and Dan. We don't own any of our own pitches due to the nature of the price of land in South County Dublin, as I'm sure you're aware. It's rather expensive. So we have pitches. We play two pitches down in Shankill beside the graveyard. We have two juvenile pitches in Thomastown, near the graduate roundabout, most people know the graduate roundabout. We have one pitch in High Road, and we have, we have a ladies' pitch in Meadowvale, which is down beside Clonkeene College. So that's where we are. Going the right way. So this is just a little bit about Cula in numbers. We've just completed a 5-year strategic plan. So these are some of the numbers that we are. So in 2002 we had 520 members. Relatively small club, South County Dublin, competing with soccer, competing with rugby, especially competing with soccer. But we've grown over the years, as you can see, from 2004 up to 2017, up to 2,300 members. Of that, we have 1,296 are actually playing members. We have 924 ladies of all ages. 61% of our members are male playing. And we like to get out of the GA. We're focusing, our strategic plan is to try and see what can we do that is not just about sport. So we're in 16 schools. And included in that, we have 7 JESH schools, and they receive coaching in the classroom setting, and it's to encourage activity, both in Cula, but just to encourage kids. Those of you who would know JESH schools, they tend to be coming from the underprivileged area, and the parents may not have the same interest in getting their kids out and about and doing things. And I think there's a lot of international papers showing that the importance to children of getting out and participating in sport from a health, but also from a mental health, and also from the bonding, that you're actually bonding with like-minded people, and hopefully like-minded people who are not into drugs and not into theft, but just to get around it. We have 190 girls in the club and 328 boys, and they participate in after-schools leagues. So our coaches go out to the schools. They work with the teachers in the schools, and they organise events which we hold up in, generally speaking, we would hold in Meadowvale or in High Road. We do a lot of health talks, so we're constantly trying to promote healthcare and health. There's a massive growth in diabetes in this country, and if we don't get the kids out and playing from an early age, they're going to turn into couch potatoes on their Xboxes and their PS2s and whatever. But they're going to be very fit with their fingers, but not with their legs. So if you actually go up to Dalkey on Saturday morning, you'll see in the region of 230, 240 from 5 to 10-year-olds, and very few of them are overweight. And if you go up tonight, we had 2 matches in Thomastown, and again, very few of those kids are overweight, which I think is a good thing. In the long term, that will mean that those kids will grow up healthy, and they will not hopefully be picking up things like diabetes, which will reduce the stress on our already very busy health system. So we're thinking more of the individuals than just the club. We have approximately 450 teenagers, and we have socials. We haven't had them now for the last while since GDPR came in and issues regarding texting underage kids. But we do run socials, and we would regularly have 450 kids at that. We have approximately 25 adult teams, and that covers ladies football, camogie, men's football, and hurling. And I'll come about where this all came from, but Ireland loves to have a split in an organisation. You know, we're not really a good organisation unless there's a split. I think when we go to my presentation, you'll see that Cula is very different. We don't have any splits. We're actually coming together, which is an unusual way in Ireland. But I'll come to that. We have about 21 teams for the younger male and females between 12 and 21-year-olds, and from the age of 5 to 12 we have 45 teams. So on average at a weekend we have 90 teams going out. Approximately 90 teams going out, playing at home or away. As part of our strategic plan, we spent about 5 to 6 weeks working on this, but one of the things we did was we pulled together focus groups. I'm sure everyone has been on a focus group somewhere along the line. We pulled together focus groups from coaches. We pulled one together from club stalwarts, as we would have called them. We pulled together one from the youth in the club. We pulled one from the ladies, and we pulled one from the parents. And these are words that came out at every single one of these focus groups. Friendship. That's what everybody was talking about, the friendship you get from being members of a club. Our tribe. They felt that they loved to compete against the neighbouring tribe up in Kilmacud, which is always a good local rivalry. Family. And it wasn't about their own family, but they felt the club to be a family. Community was another one. And some of these surprised us because we were waiting for, where's the hurlers, where's the camogie? Where's the football? Where are all these things? They didn't come out. Community was coming out. Success came out. But again, when we asked about success, it wasn't about success on the pitch. It was about the third team, the third under 14 team with 7 fellas or 7 girls who just came out and played, who just got off their backsides, if you pardon the expression, and came out and played and enjoyed it. The A team are always the ones who look for winning success. But a success for Cula would be to be the best you can be, for your team to be the best that it can be. Second home always comes up because with a lack of our own facilities, we are at the behest of the weather and the council, because the council have to look after the pitches, so they can't be sending 90 teams out on pitches when the weather is particularly bad. But it leads to issues for us. So we don't really have our own pitch that we can develop and do things ourselves. But that's not for tonight. So the history of Cula. And this really is where Dave came to it. We're really going back to 1918. And 1918 was the year that Cula first came about. We have a section, a couple of our colleagues are very into history. And this is the earliest photograph we have of the Cula Hurling Club. And it started off as a hurling club. I couldn't tell you the names of any of these people, but I'm sure some of my esteemed colleagues in Cula who are really historians will probably know the names of some of these people. But the name Cula, it comes from the ancient name for the land that goes between North Wicklow and South County Dublin. So I'm sure people will know about the Oriel Way up around County Louth and the Wicklow Way. So the name around this area was Cula. And when they came together in 1918, they took the name Cula. It was founded in 1918 by a group of men, and I put these up. I just love these when I found out. Names like Charlie Summers, Paddy Darcy, Johnny Fox, and I think that actually is the same Johnny Fox from the pub, Nibbler Robinson, Hooley Kearns, among others. So these are some of the people. This doesn't really show it, but I've highlighted in red 2 of those names in particular, which is Charlie Summers and Paddy Darcy. And I'll come back to them. And originally they played on a pitch in the quarry on Dalkey Hill. So I must ask Dunleary right down if we could get that pitch going again. It would be great. But obviously there was a pitch on Dalkey Hill. No doubt there are houses on there at this stage. Just as a side before I go to the next piece, on the far side of my slides, I sort of have a second story going. So this particular story, and if you don't mind me bearing with me, I like to go through some of these. This is a young boy who needed a kidney transplant. Both his kidneys were failing, and he was looking at dialysis, and in fact was on dialysis. And not too long ago, about a year and a half ago, they were looking to see if they could get a donor, and both his parents offered a kidney to this young chap. The father was a slightly better match, and the father donated a kidney. And this little chap is a mad Cula supporter, would love to play with Cula, but obviously his health doesn't allow it. But he was actually our club person of the year last year. And we actively promote the donor program within Cula. So go back to Charlie Summers and Paddy Darcy. Who were they? Well, they actually participated in the 1916 Rising. And a lot of people were involved in the 1916 Rising, but not everybody would know everybody. But these two local lads, one of them was from Tobermore Road, I think it was. And when they were released from prison in 1916, they came back to Cula and they started that first photograph, that first team. During the War of Independence, the majority of the team were scattered. They weren't allowed to play any great sports. They went to Dartmouth prison. In particular, the two lads, Summers and Darcy, were sent off to Dartmouth. And Charlie Summers managed to get a temporary release from Dartmouth prison because his aunt, who was the postmistress in Dalkey at the time, she had passed away. And he managed to get out of prison to come to that. And while he was there, he played for Cula. So they revived it. So when they got back out of jail, they all pulled together. And in 1923, they started playing again under the name Cula on Dalkey Hill. Again, on the right-hand side, this is just a quick montage of photograph of the Mini All-Ireland. We have a section of kids. We have a big event during the summer, and we would have had about 1,500 kids playing in this competition. And it's a great event, unless you're trying to move around Dalkey during it. But otherwise, it's a great event. So the bit of a timeline on the Cula GA Club. It started in 1918 to 1924, the Cula Hurling Club. It pretty much disbanded because of the War of the Independence and the fact that the majority of the players were scattered and were being arrested and sent off to different prisons. In 1948, a Camogie Club started, which ran until 1978, and they played in the Phoenix Park. So I'm telling you this because these are the ones that actually all come together at a later stage. St. Begnet's, and those of you who know Dalkey, at the back of the GA Club in Hyde Road, there's St. Begnet's Villas. So in 1959, St. Begnet's GA Club was formed. And they changed their name in 1962 to Dalkey Mitchells. Now there's a big gap already, so you're saying, what happened between 1924 and 1948? Well, the reality is not much. Occasionally, a team would come together and they would try and play a few matches, but they never really got structured and never really got together. So there's not really much happening in the GA in the Dalkey area from 1924 until 1948. In 1962, there was a group called the Cula Boys were formed and they really were a group that were young lads that wanted to play, and they needed a feeder section. So you might call it, nowadays we would call it the youth section to a club, but at the time they were separate. So Roger Casement finally shows his head in 1966. So you probably all thought Roger Casement was mentioned around the Cula and the GA for a long time, but in our case he wasn't. It was only in 1966, and it was a small club just to take in the minors from the Cula Boys. So the Cula Boys would have been taking young lads from age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 up until 15 or 16. And they naturally would have gone into Dalkey Mitchells, but the clubs they hadn't enough pitches and they didn't have the structure. So a new club was formed, and it really was pretty much to take in the lads who were minors. And the name, I went looking to find out, why do we call it Roger Casement? And the reason was that in 1965, Roger Casement was reinterred back into Ireland. So his body was brought back from the UK and reinterred. And it would appear that the activities that happened in 1965, maybe somebody in this room may understand it, but when you're looking for the name, you're looking for something that happened of late. And in 1966, they said, well, look, Roger Casement was born up the road. I mean, he lived in Dalkey, so he lives in Sandycove, so we're here. So let's go with the Dalkey Mitchell name. Sorry, the Roger Casement name. Again, on the right-hand side, I don't know whether we have any GA people in the room, but these four lads, and plus there is now one extra, are lining out for Dublin on Sunday. And the two lads who are dressed in the middle, number 4 and number 11, is Michael Fitzsimons and Conor Callaghan. And they are starting on Sunday in the All-Ireland final against Tyrone. The chap on your left is Paul Schutte, and on the right is Conor Mullally. So we're hoping they're going to do well for Dublin and for Dalkey at the weekend. In 1967, the Roger Casement club was struggling. The numbers just weren't coming through, and as I say, it was a club that was just to feed at a minor age. So that's under 16, under 17, under 18 to feed in. So this is where we started the amalgamation. So in September 1967, the Cula boys and the Roger Casements amalgamated to form the Cula Casement Hurling and Football Club. I'm very proud of that, we all are. In 1974, the Cula Casements then amalgamated with the Dalkey Mitchells to form, it was actually called the Cula Casement GA Club. But in the intervening years between 67 and 74, the word Cula Casements just became too difficult to say. It was a bit of a mouthful. So it just naturally lost the name Casement, and they stuck with the name Cula. For right or wrong, but that's what they found. And then we bought the hall, which would be used by the Dalkey Boxing Club at the same year, 1974, for the massive sum of £24,000. I'm delighted to say we've paid that off. And then the last one, in 1978, St Mary's Camogie Club, who had been playing out in Phoenix Park, joined into Cula, and they formed the sections that now form what is known as Cula. I'll come on to the bottom one, but just on the top right there, that is a young lad, and the reason I'm putting this up is his mother is talking tomorrow. I think she's chairing the section, Blotton Coffey. That is Blotton Coffey's son. He's about 6'24". He's a massive lad, and I coached him all the way up from a young lad. But he won a Sports Star of the Year for minors in in Ireland, and it was the first time that the All-Ireland All-Stars had been done for minors. So we're very proud of both Pather and indeed his mother. So just briefly on our ladies, because we like to push our ladies in so many areas of the GAA and in so many sports. The women are put to one side. It's a lesser sport. In Cula, it's far from that. We are so proud of the ladies section in the club. They play football and they play hurling, camogie, and they are absolutely flying it, So I should just put up one slide specially for them. But again, they amalgamated into Cula Hurling in 1978, and they've since gone from strength to strength. And in 2018, our ladies junior, they are the Leinster Junior Football Champions, and indeed they got to the semi-final of the All-Ireland Junior Football Championship. And our ladies camogie, they have won their last 3 championships. And in fact, they played this week, and they won the first round of the 2018 championship. So they're flying. The reason I put the photograph there is, and the reason they are juniors, is the average age group is probably about 18, 19, max 20, and they're performing at a really high level, and dare I say it, they're destroying the opposition. But it comes from the coaching, it comes from the ethos, and it comes from the massive numbers that we have within the club. So some interesting facts. I thought I'd try and bring it back to history. So again, on the right-hand side would be what we call our Cula Ultras. Actually, they call it Cula Ultras. So those of you who would know soccer would know that the term ultra is not something you should be proud about. It started with some Dutch football teams who had their supporters call themselves ultras, and to be honest with you, they were more ultra right wing. They were going to matches not for the match but for the fight. But a group of our kids got together for a transition year program. We have our own transition year program, and we teamed up with Feroiga, the National Youth Club Society, and we ran in conjunction with them a Dermot Early leadership program for these transition year kids, so about 16, 17 years of age. And that has been an absolute massive eye-opener for everyone in the club in the way these kids have suddenly gone from being the kids in the club to wanting to be themselves and want to be part of this club. And in fact, when if I go back to the comment about when we had the strategic groups, the big thing these kids said was that their greatest fear for the club was that there won't be pitches for the next set of ultras. They just wanted to make sure that the club was going to grow, so when they became minors and when they became senior footballers and hurlers and camogie players, that the club would be there for the next generation of kids. They're absolutely fantastic, and if anyone saw anything to do with the Cula success in the club championships last year, they will have heard that we hired buses and we hired darts. We actually hired darts, and in fact we hired a train to go to Thurles. And the GA just couldn't get over this, and the newspapers couldn't get over this, and they kept wanting to talk to me. What gave you the idea to hire a dart? And I said, it's nothing to do with me. It's these kids, the Cula Ultras. And they just make a lot of noise, and they bring a huge amount of colour, and they just raise it. And you can go to any GA match around the country, and you'll see teams mixing together and supporters mixing together. But you won't see the likes of these kids, but you will in the future, because all the other clubs are suddenly realising that this really is how you grow the sport and how you get kids to have a good social and moral understanding. I'll come back to our TY, because it does have a lot. I just thought I'd talk about the sash. I'm sure when I say the word the sash, it means it will come to your minds one particular item. But from a GA perspective, where did the sash come from? Well, actually, it comes from we've been playing in the GA for 150 odd years. But people initially, they played wearing their normal clothes. And it was mostly men, dare I say, but originally it was men. So they would come out in their Sunday clothes and they would go out and play against each other, be it hurling or football. And somebody came up with the idea, how do we know which parish is which when we're playing? And somebody came up with the idea of just getting a sash. That is St. Maur's GA Club, which are out in Rush, and they are the girls of St. Maur's, and you can see the sash, which has become part of their jersey. This is the sash from the 1957 Harold Boys School. That was their jersey at that stage. This was St. Begnet's in 1959, St. Begnet's GA team. And this was Dorky Mitchell's in 1967. So the sash came all the way through it. And I have one other photograph to put in there, because that's what we all imagined the sash was. And I'm sure the Orange Men of Northern Ireland did exactly the same thing. Rather than having some kind of a uniform that cost a lot of money, just get a sash. And the sash and the colour of the sash means something to the people who are involved. So I just thought that was an interesting piece. If I can try to point out, it's a very bad picture, but this young chap here on the bottom left-hand corner at the back, he's down here, and I can read it on the screen here. His name is H. Roberts. And H. Roberts, that's him there. About 2 or 3 months ago, when we had the presentation of trophies, that's Harry Roberts. He's still in the club. He is one of the mentors with our senior hurling team. He is still an activist, and he's been involved in the club so long. In fact, I showed him this photograph, or I told him I was going to mention him tonight and put a photograph up, and he said, is that because of the Dorky Mitchells in that, and excuse my French, he said, that fucking match, we lost that minor championship by 12 points. So he hasn't forgotten anything, but I just thought I'd put up the picture of Harry. The other thing is the umpire's white coat. I'm sure you've all seen apart from our colleagues from Bethlehem and from Kuwait, may not have seen our particular sport, but we have umpires who stand beside the goals, and they're the ones who have the unenviable task of deciding whether a ball at 40 feet up in the air has gone between the posts, over the posts, or just wide. But they wear white coats. So where does the white coat come from? Well, this is one poor bugger. God love him. That photograph from looking at it here, he's actually standing in the rain, and we've all done that. I don't think there's any parent hasn't stood in the rain at the side of a GA pitch. In the better days, it's a little bit more like that. But we've 2 theories as to where the umpire's white coat came from. And that's one. That is a butcher, okay? And the reason is, I'm sure you can all go back to your youth and when you went to the butchers, they always wore a white coat. And it was to protect their clothing from the blood stains that might get on their clothing when they were working in the butchers. And there's one of the theories is that because it was the only uniform that was available nearly in every village in the country, that they borrowed white coats from the butchers and they used them on the side of behind the goals to identify them. Or is it this one? And these two gentlemen are cricket umpires. So which one was it? I don't have an answer, by the way. But in 1871, there were 1,700 cricket clubs in Ireland. So it was the main sport that was played in this country. Not soccer, not GA, not hurling. It was cricket. It was in every village. And why was that? Well, it was the only sport at that time that was open to all classes, and it was cheap to play. All you needed was a piece of green, a couple of balls, a couple of cricket bats, and a few stumps. And it was everywhere. In fact, its popularity only began to fade in the late 1870s, and that was with the rise of the Land League and the increase in Irish nationalism, which I didn't know until I started researching this. I thought it was an interesting piece. So which one is it? You can choose. I really don't know whether it's the fact that umpires were already there for the cricket or whether it was the butchers. This is something I also found. This, I'm sure you all know the Roger Casement when they left Dalkey, went to Wales and ended up in Antrim. And indeed, the O'Neills in 1916, in 2016, brought out a 1916 jersey. I just took a few snaps of it. So again, that on the far side, that is the Antrim insignia, and showing 1916 to 2016 with a picture of Roger Casement. And for those that you can't read it, I think it says, "Cherishing all the children of the nation equally." And I thought that's a really nice thing. I think that really does embody what Roger Casement was all about, cherishing the children equally. The three colours to show the green, white and gold, and then his picture on the jersey. So that was that. And of course, Casement Park in Belfast is called in his honour. There are lots of Casement clubs all over the world. The most notable one in Ireland would be in Belfast, but they're also in New York, they're in Boston, and there's 5 or 6 Casement clubs throughout the States and around the world. And indeed, this Casement Stadium is being redeveloped at the moment. So of the Casement legacy, obviously he left Dalkey as a young man, so he never got to join Cula. Obviously, so the connection is, shall we say, a little bit tenuous. But the Casement legacy, and this really is, for us, is a very important one within Cula. I'm sure you know more about him, as I said at the start, than I do, but he did go to the Congo. He was sent by the English government to look into and to research and find out what the hell was going on out there. And he did that, and very successful. It was mentioned that, Oisin mentioned that the fact that he was an author. And there, just a quick a picture of the Congo. He also went to South America, as Oisin was mentioned. So I managed to find a few photographs of the man there. But I mean, this is a man who sort of left a nice, easy life in London to go and to do the hard work and put in the hard graft, and to give of himself in places where most people wouldn't really want to go. Now, he wasn't going really to explore. He was going to try and find out about civil rights and to inequality that was happening around the world. Human rights, the main thing. And in fact, I'm led to believe that the process that he put together for looking into human rights is now still being used. That format is still being used by Amnesty International, which I think is a massive tribute to the man and to what he has done. Equality for all. We do that in Cula. We try to be equal for all. It doesn't matter whether you're a senior hurler or whether you're a third team under 14 boy, whether you're a 9-year-old girl who doesn't really want to put a helmet on, a 16-year-old girl who is more interested in having a little chat before a game than actually listening to the coach. We don't care. If you've got ADHD, we don't care. We're even looking to see if we can put together a team for whatever it is going to be, but in special needs. In fact, a few months ago, a group of us with these ultra kids went over to Aer Lingus, where we did a coaching session with the National Council for the Blind. And did I think that was going to be fun? My heart was in my mouth because I didn't know how you could teach people who with impaired sight anything to do with football. Turns out we had jointly the most fun day I've ever had. It was absolutely fantastic. We had one gentleman who was blind, but he only went blind in the last 20 years, but played football when he was younger. And it was such fun. All I had to do was direct him in the direction of the goal, and by gum could he blast that ball at the lads in the goal. And he said he hadn't picked up a ball in 20 years, and he couldn't thank us enough for it. So, a fantastic day. So what else can we do in the Casement legacy within Cula? And it really goes back to the African experience and what we do. We have, with 2,500 odd members, we are a really disparate group. We have solicitors, we have bankers, we have stockbrokers, we have builders, we have labourers, we have, you name it, we have them all. But we have a few builders in the club, and a couple of the lads got together and they joined up with Niall Mellon, and they started going to South Africa and working with the Niall Mellon Trust and building houses. And we brought that on to a new level with our transition year students. One of our coaches, this chap here on the right-hand side with the sunglasses and the bandana, is a guard. He's now a retired guard and does motivational speeches to the youth. But his name is Kevin Spain, fantastic guy. But he thought, look, we have these transition year students. You may have heard of the Goshka Award, where you do things during your transition year and you can win a Goshka Prize, which is the President's Prize. He thought, look, let's do something with these kids. Yeah, we can teach them how to be coaches. Yeah, we can bring them up to the academy and let them work with the kids. But let's just do something. Let's give back. Let's go back to what Casement did. So we have now taken, for the last 4 years, we've now taken a group of these transition year students and we've brought them out. They have gone themselves, working with Habitat for Humanity, who did the organisation to make sure it was safe. And they have gone, and each year they've built 3 houses in Zambia, in different areas depending on where Habitat for Humanity felt they needed to go. In fact, it's been such a success that this year, the parents who have been so fed up watching their kids getting ready for this experience, and it is an experience, a life-changing experience, that they went this year. And they went, we had 25 adults went this year, and they built a school. So we've had 4 groups of our kids, but a lot of our kids are not just in Cula, they're in the local schools. And this is now broadened. So we now have Cula kids going with Loreto Abbey, with Clooney, the girls in Clooney are going. Some of the guys, I think, in Blackrock are going as well. So our kids are giving back, and we are now going back to Africa. This is a photograph from this year, and we always try and bring football jerseys out. I did have a photo, I just couldn't find it tonight, where we actually had a game going between a group of Cula kids and a group of Dublin kids, where we brought Dublin jerseys out this year and Cula jerseys out last year, and the kids were playing. Now, they weren't playing GA, they were playing soccer. But the jerseys are out there, and it's going really well. So again, it's equality for all as far as we're concerned, and what our kids are doing, and that's this year's group. That's the kids group, not the adult group, but the kids group are just back. And I think to date we have built something like for 12, 13 houses and a school. And our adult groups are still going out, not with Niall Mellon anymore, but they're still going. I think they're now going to Tanzania. So we have another group. For me, that's probably the big legacy that we have. It's not just a club, as we say, it's a way of life. We feel we're giving a lot back, not just to our own community, because we do, but we do that naturally. But this going back and building houses, and these kids come back completely changed. Completely changed. Sorry. Sorry about that. My own daughter went this year. Apologies. But I can't tell you how proud. Sorry, this is very strange. But I can't tell you how proud I am of my daughter, who went with Loretto, but of these kids. The term ultra has this bad impression. These are the very opposite. I'm so proud to be the chairperson of Cula because of these kids. Finally, and thankfully it's finally, that is a picture taken of the Cula Ultras in Croke Park on St. Patrick's Day, because they won the All-Ireland Hurling Championship for the second year in a row. And thank you very much.
Well, thanks very, very much indeed, Damien. That was a fantastic talk. I certainly learned that this Cula Club, and by the way, the Cula Club won the hurling All-Ireland Club Championship twice in the last few years. So it was a major event locally. Parade went through Dalkey before going into Croke Park. So it's a club that everybody is aware of. But I learned that the people who set up this local club had actually been involved in the 1916 Rising, that there was an association with Casement that came in during the reinterment of Roger Casement in 1966. And also the really interesting point that this very large club, with the great focus on young people and that sort of thing, that they have established this really interesting project going to Africa, and that is a connection with Casement. So, you know, really interesting to what we like doing in the Casement Summer School is outreach to different parts of the community. That'll include like Coltus, but also the GAA, and we're really delighted that we have made this contact, and that hopefully that contact between ourselves and Cula will continue. And on that note, I hope we will conclude our session for this evening. Hope to see you all over the weekend. Thanks again to our speakers, and good evening.